It's a normal day, and Frank is making borscht for his grandson Benny. It's a chill, warm vibey. The doorbell rings. His daughter Michelle is at the door. She takes the kid with unexpected determination, without explaining anything. Frank is confused. Have you ever cooked borscht thinking that it was the main event of the day? The kind with bones, so that the beets don't overcook, cooked with love, like my mother used to cook. That's how I cooked it. My grandson, Benny, loves borscht. He says mine is. Like in the cartoon where the red dragon stopped the war with a bowl of soup. He's only 5, but he already says things like that. The house smells of borscht. Bread is warming in the oven, and Benny is playing on the carpet with a little yellow tractor. I'm humming something under my breath, and he laughs. Grandpa, you're like a radio. And then, someone knocked on the door. I thought it was my neighbor, Mrs. Gersq. She's always borrowing something, tea advice, but it was Michelle, my daughter, standing in the doorway with an expression on her face as if I were about to be judged. She has her phone in her hands, keys in her hand, and in her eyes. Something new. Cold. Eh? Benny, pack your things, she said, without even saying hello. I wiped my hands on my apron and came closer. What happened, Michelle? I said, pack your things. We're leaving. Where are you going? You were supposed to leave him for the night. I've already made borscht. The bread is in the oven. I don't need borscht. And you'd better not make things difficult. Benny stopped. He looked at me, then at her. The boy sensed that something was wrong. Mom, I want to stay with Grandpa. We were supposed to build a house out of boxes today. I said we're leaving. I feel like I've been hit by a car. I don't understand yet, but something is already waiting on my chest. Fear. Confusion. I don't want to make a scene in front of the kid, and I'm not used to scandals. I'm old school. I ask as calmly as I can. Can you explain? She looks me straight in the eye and says, it's none of your business. It's my child and my decisions. You've had your turn. Now it's our turn. Those last words. You've had your turn. As if I were a discarded TV set. The little one silently takes his backpack, pulls out a toy car, and hands it to me. Grandpa, I'll leave you the tractor, so you won't be sad. That tractor is crumpled plastic, a little cracked. Only a butt right now, it's the only thing keeping me going. I nod, I force a smile. He goes to her, and I stand in the doorway, silent, and when she was already leaving, she turned over her shoulder and said, and don't call me. This is for not listening to me. The door closed. I stood there with that tractor in my hand, in my apron, in the kitchen that smelled of borscht and hot bread. My head was empty. Silence. I was left without a grandson. Not because of some disaster, not because of illness, but because of borscht, because of a conversation that I didn't seem to notice, because of some mistake that I don't even know about. I sat down on a kitchen stool. I was still holding that tractor. Something crackled in the oven. The bread was starting to burn. I turned it off. I sat down and sat there. Then I looked in my grandson's backpack, and there was a drawing. It was of us. Me in an apron, him in a tractor, and it said, Grandpa is my hero. And I didn't know whether to cry or to pull myself together and do something. But I didn't know the worst yet, that this was only the beginning, and that behind the phrase, you didn't listen to me, lies a whole abyss into which I am now about to be pulled, and that I will fall into that abyss, head first. I learned long ago that trouble doesn't come with a bang. It comes quietly. First, like a scratch on an old door handle. Then, like a crack in a cup. And only then, like thunder, when nothing can be glued back together. When Michelle started to change, I didn't notice it right away. Because she's a child. I raised her myself after her mother left. At first, she just called less often. Then she started, dropping by for a minute, instead of sitting down to dinner. And then her friends appeared. One was called Jenny, all dressed in designer clothes, with lips like a doll's, and always on her phone. She was constantly watching some webinar, Someone was teaching how to monetize the lives of relatives. Michelle and her had jokes that I didn't understand. Have you checked how much passive income you have? Maybe your father's an unnecessary asset. I laughed then. Well, I thought they were joking. But one day I went into the bathroom and saw a sticker on the mirror, "Control your water. Every drop is $1." I thought, what is this? And Michelle said, Dad, you were in the shower for half an hour. In California, they charge you for that. I kept quiet. I thought, well, it's just some fad, it will pass. And then she bought herself a course called Financial Freedom in 3 months. It cost, by the way, as much as my pension for a month and a half. I asked her, why do you need this? And she said, I don't want to live like you. In an old house with borscht for dinner. I want to go to Miami. I have a plan. I got into the habit of asking her, what about Benny? Because he, poor thing, looked at all this and didn't understand. Though sometimes they let him watch cartoons all day. Then suddenly, screen time is limited to 10 minutes. Then hugs, then coldness, like from a refrigerator. One evening, I stayed late at her house. While the little one was falling asleep, I heard her shouting into the phone in the kitchen. Yes, I can make Dad do it. He won't refuse. He's as soft as clay. The main thing is the signature. I froze. The next morning, she behaved as usual. Dad, coffee, want pancakes. And I kept quiet because I didn't want to fight. Because I was afraid of being paranoid. Because I believed that, Dad, you used my internet for 7 hours. That's 40 cents. You left the light on in the kitchen. That's another 25 cents. You're using my laundry detergent. You can buy your own, right? I felt uncomfortable. It was as if I wasn't a father but a tenant. No, worse than that. It was as if I were a debtor at a bank and she were a debt collector. I tried to talk to her. To explain that family isn't about income and expenses. That we are. Together, she said. You're old-fashioned. I want to give Benny a future. Not borscht and TV. And then she said something that struck me even then. But I didn't appreciate it. You're no longer in my budget, Dad. Budget. When I raised this child, working night shifts at the factory, I thought that a budget was about saving money, not about cutting me out as an unnecessary expense. Then she started saying strange things about Benny. Children are an investment. You have to invest in the right environment. I don't want him to grow up in a house with old things, old food, old people. And I was silent again. Because she's my daughter. And now, as I sit in that same kitchen, without my grandson, with borscht that no one wants, I remember all these little things. And I understand. There were warning signs. I just didn't want to see them. Because the heart is blind. Or because you believe that love is forever. And cheated me. She took me for everything I had. And I didn't know yet that it would get worse. That next time she would bring papers, with a stamp, that my name would be on them, and a stranger's signature. And that would be the beginning of the end of my home, my dignity, and the last thing I loved, my Benny. It's strange how people lose smells over the years. The ones that were familiar. Michelle used to smell like raspberry shampoo and laundry detergent. Now she smells like a stranger. Expensive perfume, but without soul. She came on Sunday, without warning, with a new voice, a new face, and a new husband. He and Dad. This is Rick. He helps people get out of financial slavery. Rick. Tall, with a Hollywood smile, wearing an expensive sweater and with eyes as slippery as oil. He shook my hand so hard my knuckles cracked. You are heard, Frank. I've heard so much about you. You're a real hero. 35 years at the same factory. That's something. But now that you're retired, it's worth thinking about, are those years working for you? At first, I didn't understand what he meant. I smiled and nodded. And he was already sitting in my chair, sprawled out like the owner, saying, Michelle and I were talking. You have a wonderful property. It's in a quiet location, close to schools, and its value is stable. It's a real retirement asset. I took a sip of tea, but something went wrong and I choked. Michelle handed me a napkin. Don't worry, Dad. We just want to talk about your options. My options. This is my home. Mine. Not an option. Not an investment. These are the nails I hammered in myself. This is the fence I painted with Benny. These are the cracks in the walls that I know better than my own wrinkles. Rick pulls out his tablet. Here, look. If you sell the house and invest in a divided mutual fund, you'll have a monthly income, and you can relieve stress. No need to clean, pay for heating. You can just live. All I said then was, where? Well, for example, in an apartment for seniors. It's great there, by the way. A swimming pool, breakfast. You deserve comfort, in a trailer, in a residential center, where children hand over their parents like old furniture. Is that their idea? I ask, where will Michelle live? We thought she could stay in the house, and Benny will be in a familiar environment. It's a win-win for everyone, I look at Michelle. She is silent. She just nods slightly, like an accountant counting. We'll keep this, we'll write that off. Rick continues, Frank, I don't want to pressure you, but this house is an undervalued asset. You're just holding on to it. You could get something out of it. I stand up, slowly but firmly. You know, Rick, I didn't squeeze the machine's hand when I assembled it 30 years ago. And I didn't call it an asset, because it took my daughter to school, because in it I listened to my grandson sing Old MacDonald. And this house isn't a piece of paper. It's my life. Rick smiles, falsely with a hint of condescension. I understand. Just think about it. We're not pressuring you. We're just offering you an opportunity. They left 20 minutes later. Michelle didn't even hug me. Hell, she just said, You're making this too complicated, Dad. It's just a house, not a temple. But I know it's not about the house. It's about me. They're even counting my old age. Me, myself, my life. But money has a smell. Not I've always said that. Not the kind you get in a store when you buy milk. A stench. When you have a calculator instead of a heart. When you have investments instead of a family. When you have QO me instead of I love you. And I didn't know that the next step would be paper. Not a discussion. A document. And that it would already have my signature on it, without my permission, and the house would become a tool. And I would be just a link in someone else's financial freedom plan. It was a normal morning. I made coffee, turned on the radio, which was playing some old love song, and looked in the mailbox. There was an official envelope with the bank's logo on it. I opened it slowly. I thought it was another advertisement for a pension loan or some other nonsense. But it wasn't. We offer you. It said, confirmation of a loan for $25,000. In my name, I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. The loan has been approved. The monthly payment is $470. A first payment is due next month. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't been to the bank except to withdraw a deposit 3 years ago, and who would give me a loan on my pension. I went to the bank, without calling. I just grabbed my documents, put on my jacket, and went. At the reception desk, they said, Mr. Miller, wait a minute. The manager will see you now. Like an acquaintance, like a customer. Like someone who had actually signed something. A young man of about 30, with a smile and the pleasant scent of cologne, handed me a thick folder. Here, you've taken out a line of credit against your property. Everything has already been activated. The documents are signed. Here you go. I looked. A signature, mine, on several pages. But I hadn't signed them. I felt sick. It was so physical. As if the world had shifted. As if the Earth's axis had cracked somewhere. I looked at what looked like my signature. But it wasn't. I asked, How did you check it? He shrugged. Online platform, electronic signature via SMS code. Everything is official. To your number. I sat down, and I remembered. A month ago, Michelle asked to borrow my phone. She said she needed to confirm access to the bank app because there are bonuses for the family program. I said. "Just don't do anything unnecessary." And she laughed. "Dad, I'm not a fraudster." But she was. Just a fraudster with my child's face. I left the bank as if I had just had a bad dream. The air seemed heavy. People walked by smiling, talking on their phones, while I held the document that had begun to destroy my life. I went to her house. I opened the door without knocking. Benny was watching cartoons. Rick was sitting on the couch in his bathrobe. Michelle was drinking a smoothie. I didn't yell. I put the folder on the table. "What's this?" "Ah." She glanced at it, smiled nervously. "Oh, you've already seen it. Is this a joke?" She sat down opposite me. "Dad, don't make a big deal out of it. It's just a loan. You weren't doing anything with that house anyway. I know we're together. It's for Benny. I'm planning to start an online business so we don't have to depend on the system. In my name. Without my permission. You would have agreed anyway. You always agree. I'm your daughter." And that's why you forged my signature." She covered her face with her hand for a second, then said, "You don't mind, do you? It's for Benny." Those 6 words broke me. Noah, because how can you say no when you hear for Benny? When in your imagination he is laughing, holding your finger, building a cardboard castle with you. But it wasn't for Benny. It was for her. No, for her illusions, her coaches, her imaginary Miami. I left without saying a word. Not because I had nothing to say. Because the words burned in my throat. Because betrayal by an enemy hurts. But betrayal by a loved one destroys you. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning of a debt pit. That this was just the first piece of paper in a pile that had already been drawn up. And that the next step would not be just a loan, but my home, my roof. And that borscht and the tractor would remain only in my memories. I hadn't driven that car for about 2 months. An old Ford, still from 1988, with creaky doors, a cracked mirror, and a seat that had to be propped up with a stick. But it was my Ford. I drove Michelle to school in it. Benny and I listened to audio stories in it. It wasn't just a car. It was a capsule of memories. And now, coming out of the house after the rain, I saw an empty space, just empty. At first, I thought it had been stolen. But the gate was closed, the locks were intact. I started looking for the keys. They were gone. I remembered that they were on the shelf in the hallway. And I remembered that a few days ago Michelle had said, "I'll come by tomorrow morning, we need to talk." She didn't come. I called her once, twice, 3 times. The message was not delivered. No ringing. I couldn't reach Michelle, Rick, or even Benny. In the evening, I called the nearest tow truck station. And what do you think? Yes, your Ford. Your daughter took it. She had a power of attorney. She sold it for $2,500. They sold it as scrap metal. It's old, no one wants it anymore. I couldn't even say anything. I just breathed in. I breathed out. And I felt something inside me break again. It was the last thing that still smelled like the real past. I could get in that car and imagine that Michelle was still my little girl. That Benny was happy and close by. And now even that was gone. And I sat down on a bench near an old oak tree. The park near my house. Empty quiet. Only lonely pigeons and the rustling of leaves. And someone was crying nearby. A woman. Gray-haired, wrinkled, with knitting in her hands. Her gaze was empty, like someone who had seen too much. "Are you okay?" I asked. "How can I put it?" She sighed. "I'm Margaret. 3 years ago, I had a grandson. And now, all I have are photographs." I sat down next to her. We talked for about 40 minutes. And every sentence she uttered sounded like my own story, only a little more quickly ruined. One day, my daughter came to me and said that I was part of a toxic generation. That I was an obstacle to progress. And then she said that my influence on my grandson was retrograde. I didn't know what that meant, but it sounded scary. She was deprived of the right to see her grandson. Because of a statement that the grandmother has a negative impact on the child's emotional state. Her daughter took her to court, and the court believed her. Now, she only sees her grandson in photos. Sometimes in open profiles. Oh no, I listened, and it was like looking in a mirror. I was also called old-fashioned. They are also cutting me out. Not directly, but piece by piece. First water, then borscht, then the car, then me. Ooh, a Margaret smiled through her tears. I even knitted him a hat. Now it lies in a box like ashes. Do you know what my worst fear is? I nodded, though I didn't yet know what I was about to hear. That he'll grow up and forget how I smell, forget how I rocked him. And then he'll find out, but it will be too late. And then I understood. It's not about the car, not about the debts, not even about the house. It's about memory. About love that fades from hearts if you don't hold on to it. And that Michelle wasn't the first, and unfortunately not the last. We said goodbye. Havana, she gave me her number. A plain piece of paper with the same tremor in her hand as in my soul. I went home and sat down in front of a photo of Michelle when she was little, and Benny holding my hand. And I said aloud, I won't give you up, kid. No matter what they come up with, I won't let them erase you. I won't let them turn you into an asset. But the next morning I received a summons. A real one. With a stamp. Amanada Michelle filed a claim of psycho-emotional unfitness to care for a child they were preparing. And that was only the second bottom. A court summons is not just a piece of paper. It's like a ticket to a place you didn't ask to go. But they take you there irreparably. And your voice is no longer heard because someone else is speaking for you. Speaking loudly and confidently and lying. I held that envelope like a mine. I already knew what was inside, but I still opened it with trembling hands. A case for review of custody of minor Benjamin Miller. Reason: inability to provide emotional stability and a safe environment for the child. So, I'm dangerous. I'm the one who read him stories until 3 in the morning because he was afraid of the dark. I'm the one who sacrificed myself so that his mother could get a degree. I felt something tighten in my chest, a something warm, like hope, began to cool. I was no longer angry. I was scared, because suddenly this world was no longer mine. The lawyer sat in a small office above a pharmacy. Gray-haired, with a faded jacket and the look of a man who had seen too much. Sit down, Mr. Miller. I've read the statement. I was hoping for at least a hint of optimism. Something like, don't worry, we'll get her. But he said something completely different. She has all the cards. Social services are on her side. You're a pensioner. She has a stable income, even if it's unofficial. She has a partner who has signed an agreement to help with the upbringing. She has the documents. You have. He paused. He looked me straight in the eye. You only have hope. I wanted to get up and leave. To close my eyes, to wake up in the house where Benny is sleeping and Michelle is bringing coffee and saying, Dad, everything is fine. But I sat there and listened further. She provided a medical certificate stating that you are experiencing anxiety. Is this your nurse whom you consulted last year? Yes, I was depressed after my brother's death. Yes, I was on a short course of antidepressants. So what? She added screenshots of your messages where you write that you can't take it anymore, you want to disappear. Are those your words? I nodded. It was at night. After she sold my car, I wrote to her asking to talk. It didn't work out. There are also statements from neighbors who heard screams. Was it a quarrel? It was my TV. It's lulled. But does that change anything? The lawyer looked again. I don't want to lie. There's a chance, but it's small. You'll have to prove that you're not just normal, that you're the best option. And in court, the logic is simply younger parents are better, especially since she's the mother. I asked. What about love? What about the fact that he knows me, that he feels comfortable with me? That can't be proven in court. It's not a number. It's not a piece of paper. It's not an argument that I left the office empty-handed. But not with an empty heart, because it was burning again. I won't give up. I won't let her erase me. Even if she has the documents, I have memories. And Benny has them too. He remembers. I'll go to this court. I'll tell it like it is, that I'm not perfect, that I'm old, yes, that I'm sometimes afraid of the future, yes, but I'm the only one who loves him not for his own benefit. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the sofa in an old shirt that smelled of mothballs and borscht, repeating, I won't let her take you. You hear me, kid. I won't let her. And for a moment, it seemed that in the darkness I heard him reply, I'm with you, Grandpa. But time was passing, and the trial was already in a week. And then, either victory or complete silence. Because after this trial, I might never hear his voice again. After the trial, I didn't walk. I dragged my feet. Like stones. I listened to the rustling of my soles on the asphalt. Everything had already been said. The judge, a young woman with cold eyes, looked at me as if I were a problem, not as an old man, as something superfluous. Living conditions do not meet standards. Psycho-emotional stability is questionable. A custody belongs exclusively to the mother. Yes, I lost, not in fact, and a week later I lost again. Your debt exceeds the critical limit. Your property will be seized to cover the debt. That's what the guy who came in a van from the bank told me. They stood in my yard like they were hunting, like I was a boar that needed to be hunted for statistics. And he handed me a piece of paper. You can appeal the decision in court, but it won't change anything. You have no collateral, and the debt is registered. Michelle disappeared. Her phone is off. Rick, they say he moved to another city and started an Winfo business. And I was left without a home, without Benny, and with a suitcase containing pants, a shirt, a toothbrush, and a photograph. An old, worn-out one of Benny with chocolate on his cheeks, laughing. My friend Stan offered me a trailer. It was in his backyard. He used to go fishing with it. But now it was my home. It's cramped but dry. And the blanket is warm, he said. I nodded and said nothing. Because if I said thank you, I would start crying. And I was tired of crying. I slept, clutching my pillow like a child clutches a toy. In the morning, I walked into town because I had nowhere else to go. Nothing to do, scary to think, painful to remember. One day in the rain, I went into an old store. Benny and I used to buy ice cream here. He always chose strawberry, and I chose vanilla. We sat on a bench near the cash register. Aloo, he said. Grandpa, ice cream is happiness if you don't eat it in time. I laughed then, and now, I just look around silently. Mr. Miller? I looked up. The cashier, young with red hair. She smiles somehow. Familiarly, you used to come here with your grandson. He was so funny. He always called me Mrs. Ice Cream. I nodded, and my throat tightened. Where is he? Is okay. I remained silent. She guessed from my eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just, I remember you so well. I smiled. So sincere, so kind. And most importantly, she remembers. I didn't make it up. I didn't imagine those years they happened. Someone else remembers. Always thought you and him were best friends. Like in the movies, that kind of connection. It's rare. I nodded. We were. She wanted to say something. But she fell silent. She just handed me a bag with a roll. Take it. You knew, on the house, you need something warm right now. I sat down on the same bench. It was pouring outside. I chewed the roll. Sweet, warm, fresh, and there was a lump in my throat. Like a ball of wool. I remembered how Benny laughed. How he dropped his ice cream. How he said, Grandpa, you're the best. And I thought if he really thought that, then I haven't lost everything. But I also understood something else. She was now writing a different story. One where he was without me. Where I had disappeared. And if I didn't do something, he would eventually believe it. That I wasn't there. That I was just a shadow, a figment of his imagination, a former. I couldn't let that happen. I left the store. I didn't even feel the rain. And only one thought was spinning in my head. Ice cream is happiness that melts if you don't eat in time. And I let it melt. But as long as I still have my memory, I can find him. As long as there is still a photo somewhere, a letter somewhere, laughter somewhere, I can get it back. I returned to the trailer. I sat down. And I started writing a letter. Not to the court, not to Michelle, to Benny. Hi, kid. Honey, it's your grandfather. I'm a little lost, but I'm coming to you. I won't give up. And in that trailer, with rain on the roof and the smell of a damp blanket, for the first time in a long time, I believed that something was still ahead. When the phone finally beeped, I first thought it was spam. The signal is bad in the trailer, and usually no one writes to me. I opened it, and my heart skipped a beat. Michelle, after the silence, after the trial, after the disappearance. For the first time, a short, sharp message. No greeting, no emotion. Don't meddle in my affairs. Otherwise, forget about Benny forever. I reread it 3 times. And each time, the same words hit harder. No, Dad? No, I'm sorry. Not even I don't know what I'm doing. Just a threat. I sat in the trailer, pencil in hand, writing another letter to Benny. And my hand clenched. The letter tore in the middle. I was waiting for at least a hint of remorse, that she understood, that she woke up, that she wanted to come back. But instead, a wall. An iron wall. Hostile. And the next day, I went to the local library. They had free internet there. I wanted to find something that would help me understand where she was headed. I typed in Rick Grayson, financial advisor, California. And then something unexpected happened. A man approached me, about 50 years old, wearing a denim jacket with a coffee in his hand. Excuse me, are you looking for something about Rick Grayson? I nodded cautiously. I worked with him. More precisely, I had the misfortune of dealing with him. His name was Travis. He lived in a neighboring town. His story was like a carbon copy of ours, only with different names. My daughter met him at some seminar for new leaders. 6 months later, there were loans, new investments, a pseudo-franchise. When it all blew up, he just disappeared. No apologies. No words. And she was left with debts and a child. And then what? I asked. And then, like everyone else. Court, sold the house, I'm nearby. She was offended. Then she thanked me. But I still don't see my grandson. I listened, and felt the puzzle coming together. How this seemingly foreign story was part of mine. How we are all old men fighting the windmills of a new era. Where manipulation is a tool, and family is a resource. And Michelle is alone now, I asked. Travis nodded. I read it in the local news. He left her after she registered the car in his name. And he sold it. So she's alone, with debts, with a broken head. But even now, she doesn't come with repentance. She comes with fists. What is this? Shame. Or has she really lost herself? That evening, I sat on a bench near the trailer. Next to me was an old curling iron that Benny once wanted to fix. In my hand was another unfinished letter. In my head was a storm. I thought, maybe I should be the first to take a step. And at the same time, why me? I'm the victim. I didn't start the war. But Benny deserves peace. Not destruction, not silence between adults like a stone wall. And then, a new message. From an unknown number. Your daughter owes me $5,000. She said you are her father and can guarantee payment. Contact me. I reread it and laughed. Bitterly, heartbreakingly. She's already using my name to keep going. Without even asking, just putting me in a debt scheme. Like a pawn, like an advance. I realized one thing: the truth won't stop her. Memory won't stop her. Not even a fall would stop her. But I can't give her Benny's future too. He's not a bargaining chip. He's a boy who once said to me, "You're the strongest, Grandpa. You're like Superman. And if Superman fell, he has to get up." I called Travis. You said you had connections. Lawyers who got Rick off the hook? Yes, there's one. Though old, but stubborn. He knows how to dig. Give me the number. The time has come. If I don't get Benny back, at least I'll leave him the truth. They say that old age is loneliness. That friends dissolve over the years like sugar in water. But I had no idea that one of those crystals was still floating smoothly somewhere nearby. I was sitting at the bus stop, waiting for the minibus to the district lawyer. A free one, recommended by Travis. In my hands, I held documents from the bank, certificates, and papers from the court. On my lap was my notebook. My heart was heavy, like before a storm. I'm a man, Frankie Blake. I looked up. The man was gray-haired, stocky with a beard. He was smiling. "Is that you? Damn it! Frank, from the Davis baseball team. I'm Tom Burnett." My brain was rustling like an old cassette tape. About the face. Definitely Tom. Our school's first baseman. The one who wore a lucky piggy bank under his jersey and believed he would become a rock star. We hugged like two old men who never thought they would live to see the moment of together again. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Well, fighting windmills," I sighed. "Daughter, grandson, loans, courts. Everything that was supposed to happen somewhere out there in the movies, but happened here." Tom looked down. "My children kicked me out of the house. Our own family home," they said. "We put everything into it. And you just sit there and demand respect." But you know what? I didn't demand anything. I just was there. We sat there like two wounded soldiers. Only the battlefield was the heart. And the weapons were documents, phones, and injustice, which is always younger and louder. "I need a lawyer," I said. "Me too. I already talked to one who helps pensioners. He pushes back where they squeeze us. Let's go together." The office was in an old bank. The room had a carpet that creaked underfoot and tea that smelled of cinnamon. The lawyer was Mrs. Portman, 60 years old, dry and precise as a scalpel. "I'm listening," she said without emotion when we sat down in front of her. I laid everything out: Michelle, Rick, the debts, the guardianship, the threats. Tom added his storing how the children, seeing that their father was no longer useful, drew up a full power of attorney and sold the house while he was being treated at a sanatorium. "You both have a serious situation. But there is good news. You are not alone. And most importantly, we have the law, which is old but not yet dead." "But she has lawyers, and the status of a mother," I interjected. "And you have evidence. And you didn't give up on the child. You are fighting. That's the main thing. For the court, for the press, for the child herself." She said we could file a lawsuit to review custody due to emotional and financial abuse, that we could file a criminal case for forgery, and even demand compensation. I looked at her as if she were a lantern in the middle of a dark forest. Because for the first time in a long time, someone had said to me, "You're not to blame. You have a right to the truth." Tom and I left the office in silence. But it was a different kind of silence. Not the silence of defeat. But the silence of a battle yet to come. "You know, Frank," he said as we walked together on the wet pavement, "maybe we shouldn't just save ourselves. We should show everyone that we're still here, that we can't be broken." I nodded. For the first time, I wasn't alone. I was no longer an old man lost in a trailer. I was a man with a friend, a plan, and a heart that hadn't given up. That evening, I finished writing my letter to Benny. But this time it was different. "Kid, you said I was like Superman. And Superman never gives up. I'm coming for you. And if I have to, I'll turn this damn world upside down. Because this war is not about money. It's about memory. About connection. About love that has the right to be loud. And about the fact that even at 60, you can get together and go into battle. Not for yourself. For those who cannot yet defend themselves." The morning was warm and quiet like never before in the last year. The sun shone through the trailer window, flooding the room with soft light. I sat in an old chair, drinking coffee and trying to calm my hands, which were shaking nervously. Today is the day when I will finally see Benny. I decided to do this after long months of despair, letters, and court hearings. Fiat felt like before a big battle. Only now not with weapons, but with love and patience. I cooked borscht, the one he loved since childhood. The room smelled of red beets and garlic. I put a few books of fairy tales on the table, the ones I used to read to him at night. He has to see that this is his home, I thought. The door suddenly opened. There he stood. Benny, a little taller, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "Grandpa," he said quietly, but his voice trembled. The hug was long. I felt him squeeze me tightly, as if afraid that I would disappear again. Mom said, "You're not evil, just sad," he said quietly. I smiled through my tears. Sad because I waited so long, but now I'm happy you're here. We sat down at the table and talked about little things. School, ice cream, new toys. I listened to every word as if it were the most precious treasure. "Do you remember when I made borscht for you?" I asked. "Yes, and it was the best. Only you gave me more sour cream, and Mom said I ate too much." He laughed. I realized that these little moments are the most important. They give you the strength to hold on, to fight, to not give up. Because life is not just about courts and debts. It is about love, which lives in every hug, every word. Before leaving, Benny looked at me and said quietly, "Grandpa, I want you to know that Mom is sometimes wrong, but I believe in you." These words gave me new hope. Because sometimes it is children who reveal to us the truth that we are afraid to see. I understood that the struggle was not over yet. There would still be days of doubt and fear, but now. There is this moment, and I will not let it go. When Benny left, I was alone in the room. The smell of coffee, borscht, and children's laughter lingered with me for a long time. I sat down and started writing. Not a letter, but a promise. That I would keep fighting, that I would not let anyone break the bond that cannot be broken. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our story. Ava May, and remember, it's never too late to fight for what really matters. The sun was quietly setting behind the trees, flooding the yard with golden light. I stood next to Benny, holding a small shovel in my hands, and showed him how to dig the ground for flowers. "That's right, kid," I said. "You dig the soil as if you were uncovering a treasure." He listened attentively, carefully dipping his hands into the soil. His face glowed with curiosity and joy. It was a miracle to sit next to my grandson, watching him learn, laugh, and forget all his troubles. I remembered how much pain there had been before. How many nights I couldn't sleep, how many tears I hid behind a smile. And now, just like that, we're planting flowers. "Grandpa, why are we planting flowers?" Benny asked. Upon so they can grow, so the world can be more beautiful, and so we can remember that even a small thing can become something big. He nodded as if he understood. Nearby was an old bench where we once sat with your grandmother, talking about plans and dreams. I thought about everything I had been through. How I lost my home, my grandson, my trust. How I struggled with fear and helplessness. And how now, holding the soil in my hands again, I feel that it was not all in vain. Because life is not just vanity and problems. It is also flowers, smiles, and warmth. Benny picked up a small seedling. And I showed him how to carefully place it in the ground. "Grandpa, will you ever be happy again?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "Yes, son, because you are here. And as long as you're here, I'm not alone." My dear friends, if you too have ever felt that your loved ones have betrayed you, that loss is the end, know this, and it is not. We are a generation that has been through a lot and has not yet said its last word. Together we are stronger. Together we can do anything. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our story, so that together we can support those who are struggling, so that we never forget that love and hope are our strongest allies. I looked at Benny, laughing, holding a flower that had just sprouted in his hands. And I realized life goes on, and we are together. And if there is a story in your heart that you haven't told yet, tell it. Because this story is not just mine. It is ours.